What's up, everyone on the internet? Thank you for making this video part today. I am so excited to upload one for you guys because for this video, we're going to be taking a look at one more spaghetti western, and we're also going to wrap up the Dollar Trilogy with the good, the bad, and the ugly. This has been a long time coming because for as long as I could remember, this is one of my dad's favorite movies of all time. If anything, right off the top of my head, his top 3 movies are definitely The Godfather, Field of Dreams, and Good, Bad, and the Ugly. So going into this movie, I felt like there was a bit of pressure knowing that I'm going to need to talk about one of the only films that my dad refers to as true cinema, given how he's not that much of a moviegoer. Now with that being said, this movie came out back in 1966 and is the third and final installment to the Dollar Trilogy, where we had Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and finally Good, Bad, and the Ugly. And one of the things this movie does great is the overall soundtrack. I mean, holy crap, because during the opening, we are introduced to our 3 characters who are referred to as the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I love how the second you hear the opening notes, the soundtrack immediately pulls your attention with some iconic piece of music that a lot of media uses today as reference to cowboys and the West. But going back to the characters, we are first introduced to the bandit called Tuco, who the film labels as the ugly. We are then introduced to Angel Eyes, who is a mercenary and is referred to as the bad. And finally, we are reunited with our favorite nameless gunslinger played by Clint Eastwood, who is referred to as Blondie throughout the movie and is ultimately labeled as the good. And what I loved about the introduction is how it basically labels who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, and who's the man in the middle. Now, one of the things I noticed throughout the movie is how the definition of trust is tested throughout the entire story, where both Blondie and Tuco are essentially partners before a large sum of money drives a wedge in their partnership. How much money? Well, try $200,000, and the movie set in 1862. Hang on, let's see how much something that would be worth today. Oh my God! $6.2 million! Holy crap! Oh yay! I understand why trust might be an issue given how the good and the ugly have a piece of the puzzle where Tuco's given the name of the cemetery where the money is located, while Blondie has the name of the grave where the money is buried. Now throw in Angel Eyes, who has neither of this information but is also after the money. And I love how when you look at someone like Tuco, he's a con man, and when dealing with a con man, you're gonna get stabbed in the back. However, because he needs the information from Blondie, he's willing to act all friendly, which is what Angel Eyes is counting on if he's going to find the money. So going back to what I said about trust, I love how from beginning to end, we're essentially watching bad men trying to trust each other. Now, even though Blondie is the hero of the story, let me remind you that this is the same guy who broke out a con man after he turned him in for the reward. And if this is the same guy we saw in the last 2 movies, this could also be the same guy who pitted 2 rival gangs against one another and was making profit out of it. Having said that, looking at Blondie, looking at Angel Eyes, and looking at Tuco, all 3 of these men are selfish people who need to trust one another, at least until the money is found. And oh my God, going into the 3rd act of the movie, once we reach the end of this partnership, the guns come out, the cameras are rolling, and the music is at its peak when all 3 of these characters know that only one of them is going to be walking away with the money. And watching that scene unfold, everything is firing off all cylinders as we are given a standoff between our characters, but on a much grander scale as the camera gives us unbelievable shots of everything from wide shots of the beautiful scenery and landscape to up close shots of all 3 of our actors. I mean, it's pretty much what makes Western movies so iconic, because you feel as if you're in the scene when you see the sweat going down everyone's faces before watching their hand twitches as the music is rising and rising and rising. And by the time the scene ends, after holding your breath for so long, you feel relieved knowing that the tension has finally ceased and we can now focus on the money. Now, when looking at the money, in a way, it's almost a character itself, because it was the gold that brought these characters together, and at the same time, it was the gold that led them to killing each other. It pretty much shows you the dark side of greed and how money will get anyone to do anything. Now, one could say, I would never betray my friend for money. You may think that, but let's see if your friend feels the same way when they see that you are standing between them and $6 million. And then we'll see how loyal your friend really is. Now, going back to the story, when we get to the big scene, The Money has a theme where we hear the soundtrack labeled The Ecstasy of Gold, which is a beautiful piece of music. So looking at the overall setting, the tone, and the driving force of the story, I really enjoyed this film, which is funny because when I saw the runtime for this movie, I was a bit discouraged when I noticed that this movie is pretty much 3 hours long. Now I say that, but given how some of my favorite movies like The Godfather and The Return of the King, both of which are 3 hours long, I shouldn't have been too discouraged. Still, to the average person, 3 hours is a lot of time. However, there are people who did go out of their way to see Oppenheimer and Avengers Endgame. But you know what? Despite this movie being over 3 hours long, holy crap, the pacing of the film is really fast as we waste no time in getting to the end of the journey where the gold is waiting for us. And looking at all three movies, I gotta say that this film is probably the best in the entire trilogy, where we have Good, Bad, and the Ugly sitting at the top as the best film in the entire Dollar Trilogy, Fistful of Dollars being a close second, and For a Few Hours More sitting nice in third, but it's still a really good movie. So if you have the time and you are interested in seeing practically one of the best films Clint Eastwood has ever starred in, I highly recommend you watch this film. Well, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. That was my overall review for The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly. If you like what you saw, hit the subscribe button so you guys updates from this channel. I'll see you next time with a brand new video. Bye-bye.